Well, greetings, folks.
Greetings.
Good to see you. Greetings to you folks out there on the CD program. Have you ever been deceived? We've all been deceived, haven't we? From one time to another. And I've heard people tell me that they couldn't be deceived. And in saying that, they were already deceived. They were deceived and believed they couldn't be deceived. And it's not a pleasant feeling to be deceived. It's not a pleasant feeling to be took, as we sometimes say. To be led down a certain road, believing something to be true, only in the end to find out it was just a big lie. It's not a good feeling to be took, so to speak, by someone else. Well, in about 6 months, we're going to have a presidential election. We will either keep the one we've got, or the American people will choose someone else. And we're going to hear a lot from those politicians on both sides. On both sides. We're going to hear a lot of things that may be deceptive. Propaganda, you might say. It's propaganda. It's trying to get people to believe that that they need something, that it's necessary, that it's real, and they need to do something about it. We live in a world of deception, don't we? There's hardly anything appears the way it really is. There's absolutely no truth in the business world anymore. There's no truth in advertisement. See all these advertisements on TV? None of them are what they are touted to be. There's hardly an instance where two people can carry on a conversation without one lying to the other, or maybe both lying to each other. And all of this being as bad as it is, there's even a deception of a higher plane, for there is a medium or intervening substance by which all is brought about. But how does this deception transpire, especially this deception of the higher plane? How is it brought about? Well, everybody knows who Adolf Hitler is. Adolf Hitler fought in the First World War, in which Germany got defeated. And after that, he got into politics, so to speak. And he attempted a coup within the German government. And, of course, it failed, and they threw him in prison. And he was supposed to spend, I think, 5 years in prison, but I think he only spent 1. But as he was in prison, he wrote a book. It was a book of his autobiography, I guess. But on top of that, it was a book about how he visioned the future for the German people. And it was called Mein Kampf. That's MEINKAMPH. And it's loosely translated as My Struggle. So it was his struggle, you know. And in this book, there's a whole section that describes the process of deceiving and holding sway over other people and holding sway over the masses. Now, he readily admits that he did not come up with propaganda. He attributed it to the enemy. And he goes to tell how the enemy successfully used propaganda during the war and so forth. And that's where he admittedly learned how propaganda could be used and the effectiveness of it. I'm sorry. Got my tongue twisted there. Now, Adolf Hitler was a smart man when it comes to influencing other people. He successfully used this propaganda principle. Well, Satan the devil is also a smart being. Some say Adolf Hitler was demon-possessed, and I, for one, believe he was. For the techniques he used are also the techniques used by Satan to accomplish the same goals. And again, like I say, we've got a presidential election coming up, and you're going to hear a lot of propaganda before it comes to pass. But how is this accomplished? Well, it is accomplished through propaganda. And it can happen in this country, and it will happen before it's all over. And it happens all the time in the political arena out there. Now pay close attention to what old Adolf had to say here, for it can be a little hard to understand if you don't meditate on what is being said. And I'll try to explain it as I go along. This is what he quoted. He said, "The really decisive question is this: to whom should propaganda be addressed?" And like I say, he had this whole big section in that book devoted to nothing but propaganda. He said, to whom should propaganda be addressed? Should it be addressed to the scientifically trained intelligentsia or the lessive educated masses? Answer is, it should also always be addressed to the masses. The function of propaganda, he says, does not lie in the scientific training of the individual, but in calling the masses' attention to certain facts or lies, for the most part, certain facts, processes, necessities, etc., whose significance is for the first time placed within their field of vision. So what he's saying, you got to paint this picture for the masses out there, and you've got to convince them that it's the truth, when in fact it's probably a lie. You've got to convince them that it's necessary to have this or whatever it is. You've got to place that within their field of vision. So you have to paint this picture, he's saying, in the minds of the masses. He goes on to say, now the objective to all this is to convince the masses the facts are real. The process is necessary, and the necessity is correct. But since propaganda is not and cannot be the necessity itself, since its functions is like a poster consisting of attracting the attention of the crowd and not in educating those who are already educated or striving after educated and knowledge. So this propaganda is to be thrown not among the educated people, but among the people of lesser knowledge, the masses. Its purpose is not knowledge. It's the effects, for the most part. And these effects is aimed at the emotions of the masses, and only to a limited degree to the intellect. And we can even see that going on now as these riots and stuff are going on. It's the emotions of the masses, not to people who has intellect or thinks clearly and can see what's going on. Now, what he's saying is propaganda is something which is used by the so-called highly educated to play on the emotions of the lesser educated in order to trick them into believing something, whatever it may be, is the truth. And whatever it is necessary, when in fact it is probably not the truth and probably not necessary. It is just something that you want them to feel that way about to suit your own needs. Like I say, it goes on in the political arena all the time. It's a means of deceiving people to accept what you want them to believe, and in doing so, you can gain control over those people's lives. And we know that Adolf Hitler had great control over the people, for the most part. He goes on to say, all propaganda must be popular, and its intellectual level must be adjusted to the most limited intelligence among those being addressed. Consequently, the greater the mass it is intended to reach, the lower its purely intellectual level will have to be. Therefore, propaganda is not concerned with intelligent conversation, but to call attention to a certain cause and rouse emotions to that cause by the masses. Again, I say, we see that going on. It's a way of persuading the masses to rally behind you, and in doing so, believing what they're doing is the right thing. Adolf Hitler was good at that. Some of our own politicians are good at that as well. Now, what are the tools most effective in delivering and spreading propaganda today? Well, that should be obvious. There are two tools used almost exclusively to do that today. That is the TV and the internet. Radio and live speeches are still used to some extent, but mostly it's the TV and internet, and now you have Twitter and all these social media outlets as well. And even when someone gives a live speech, it is often seen in real time on the TV or the internet. Now, if you want to see propaganda in action, I mean really put to use, just watch, as I said, the political campaigns of our politicians and all the political jargon that they throw at us every day. You will see it in action. They give you these quick, short statements, sound bites, we call them. And they are repeated over and over and over. The media repeats them over and over and over till they are burned into the brains of the general population. So the politicians use the news media to carry on their propaganda as a propaganda tool, and they use it effectively. These sound bites are not designated to appeal to the intellects or people who's got some common sense about them, but to the emotions of the masses, and it works very well. Catchy little phrases. And it works because most people ride along on their emotions rather than on good common sense. Hitler goes on to say, the more modest its intellectual ballast, the more exclusively it takes into consideration the emotions of the masses, the more effective it will be. In other words, the less intellectual content it has, and the more emotional content it has, the more effective it will be. Propaganda is not designed to please a few intellectuals, but to persuade the masses you are right, and to rally their support behind you. And he did that very well. A lot of our politicians do that very well. The art of propaganda, he says, is to understand the emotional ideals of the great masses and finding through a psychologically correct form the way to the attention and then to the heart of the broad masses. So you've got to get their attention and build them up and blow them up. And that, my friends, is exactly what our politicians do. That's what they do to get elected. Whatever it is the masses as a whole wants, that's what they promise they will do, if you will only vote for me. They tell us all these great things they're going to do, for they know full well they can't deliver them. So, but it doesn't bother them because they know exactly what Adolf Hitler knew, which is, quote, The receptivity of the great masses is very limited, and their intelligence is small, and their power of forgetting is enormous. How true that is. They tell us all these things every 4 years or every 2 years, in some cases with our local government and so forth. They keep telling us all these things. We know they're not true, but we forget about them and believe them again, don't we? We know politicians lie to us. We know they can't deliver on what they say. But year after year, election after election, again, we forget the lies they told before and go on to believe a whole new line of propaganda. And they do it in hopes we will vote for them, to put them in or to keep them in office. And that's how Adolf Hitler got elected. He got elected, people. The people put him in there. And when he got in, he took away a lot of their rights. The German people were in a depression. Along comes Hitler, making all these great promises of prosperity. And the people voted him into office by a landslide. How did he do it? By lies and propaganda. Now, he did get the trains up and running, and he got the economy going pretty good. And the German people thought that was great. They had a job, make a living, but he was just building up to something greater by doing that, to get behind him and his war machine in the end. Now, effective propaganda is limited to just a few points and slogans. Then it is repeated and repeated and repeated until it is burned into the brains of the last member of the public and the masses. Such as, President Obama, one of his slogans was change you can believe in. Yes, we can. He repeated that over and over and over and over, if you remember. And a lot of other politicians do the same thing. To go on, it says, and at any time you sacrifice the slogans and try to be many-sided, the effect will wither away, for the masses can no longer digest or retain the material offered. In this way, the result is weakened, and in the end will entirely cancel out. So Adolf Hitler, he knew what he was doing. He knew how propaganda worked. He studied it from other people. In other words, you need to keep the information short and simple. For if you offer too much material at one time, you will only confuse the people. So they use these short sound bites and harp and harp and harp on them until it becomes a part of our thinking. Now, these advertisements on TV, they do the same thing. They repeat it over and over and over. And they throw those advertisements at you all day long. Same thing, over and over and over, until it's burned into your brain. What Adolf Hitler was driving at was the end result. He said it's the end result that matters, and that the propagator has no intention of reason or truth or intellect or giving the other side any benefit of the doubt. He says, what authorities least of all understand is the very first axiom of all propaganda activity, to wit, the basically subjective and one-sided attitude it must take towards every question it must deal with. So propaganda is one-sided. There's no dealing with it. You can't, it's got to be your way or the highway when you use propaganda, is what he's saying. You can't reason. The propagandist does not reason. There's no reasoning within propaganda. Nothing else matters but the propagandist's view of the world. It's either his way or the highway. That's his objective, to persuade everyone his way is the right way. And he will use any means and any amount of lies and false information to accomplish that. He will go to any length of immorality and use anybody he can to reach his ultimate selfish goals. That's what Adolf Hitler did. And the liberal media and the internet in our modern society is the propagandist's two best tools. For once he has convinced the media, or rather deceived the media, that the facts are real, the process is necessary, and the necessity is correct, they will finish doing the job for him. And they do that. They effectively use the medium to do that for them. They will harp and harp and harp on these certain little sound bites until it is burned into the brain of the general public. And you and I, folks, are part of that general public. We are part of the masses. So this is how he spreads his propaganda in today's society. And Satan, Satan's behind it all. We know that Satan's behind it all. But he uses these other people, and they use the media, and eventually it filters right on down to us. And we as God's people need to understand this so we can avoid it and not be caught up in it. Out there in our political culture, there are two kinds of people. As you watch the TV news media, and if you pay close attention to it, you can see this. When you watch all these news programs and the interviews they have with different people, they're easy to spot. The news media and this the news media, it's a joke when applied alongside the real news, the real truth, that is. For the word itself means to be in the middle. And we all know, or should know, that the so-called news media is never in the middle. It's always to the extreme right or to the extreme left. Usually the extreme left for the most part. But when the news media interviews different people, all these different news analysts, all these different doctors and of this and doctors of that, and supposed to be intellectual people, and all these lawyers, all these so-called experts in their fields, when they interview these people, they talk and argue endlessly about the goings-on in the world, especially all the political agenda. In these people, you will see two kinds of people. Some who are trying to be objective and reasonable about certain things, and those who are actually trying to tell the facts and educate people about what's going on. You have those kind of people. And then there are those who take a totally one-sided view of whatever the issue is. And it is these people who are most valuable to the propagandist. And these type of people will always roll right over top of the person trying to tell the truth of any matter. And if all else fails, they will just shout them down till they can't tell the truth. These are the people whom he values the most because he has duped them into believing the facts are real and the process is necessary. They are the soundboard for his short little phrase, his one-sided ideals, and his appeal to the emotions of the people. And it works for them time after time. And the reason it works so well is because, as Adolf Hitler said, the power of our forgetting is enormous. And the reason God's people and his nation as a whole forgets is because we want to forget people. We have this problem with reality here in the United States. We want to delude our minds. We want to mislead our minds and to deceive our judgment into believing what is wrong. And believing what's right is wrong and what's wrong is right. We want to evade the truth and live in a lie. We want to live in a fantasy land. Turn over to Isaiah. You thought I wasn't going to have any scripture in my sermon today, didn't you? Turn over to Isaiah 5. Isaiah 5, verse 24. It says, "Therefore as the fire devours the stubble, and the flame consumes the chaff, so their root shall be rottenness, and their blossom shall go up as dust, because they have cast away the law of God of hosts, and despised the word of the Holy One of Israel." Back in verse 13 there, it says, "Therefore my people are gone into captivity, because they have no knowledge," no real truth, that is. "And their honorable men are famished, and their multitudes dried up with thirst." You know, the multitudes, or the masses, are thirsting for something, for better jobs, or maybe a job at all. They thirst for a better life. And more stuff because we don't have enough. They thirst because they are greedy. That's why the political propagandist is so effective. He knows the people want him to give them something. Politicians know that. They know that he knows that they want him to make their life better. And the harder the times are, the more gullible the people will be. The easier it is to lie to people and get their votes. That's how Adolf Hitler came to power. And look what he did to his people and their nation. He brought them to ruin, all for his own selfish purpose. Do we think it can't happen to us? Well, don't lie to yourself, friends. Don't delude your own minds. Do we think someone who is legally elected to the office of president could not then put his henchmen into key positions and offices, kill off his opposition, and take over the military by placing the right people in the right places? That's what Adolf Hitler did. And it can be done again by the right person with the wrong motive. It can be done. Continuing on here with what Adolf Hitler said. He said, "What, for example, would we say about a poster which was to advertise a new soap and describe other soaps as good? Would we not shake our heads? The same thing applies to political advertising. You know, you can't advertise a new soap and then say, well, all the other soaps is good. I mean, you'd never sell any." So he says the same thing applies to political advertisement. The function of propaganda is not to weigh and ponder the rights of different people, but to effectively emphasize the one right it has set out to argue for. Its task is not to make an objective study of the truth, as so far as it favors the enemy, and then set it before the masses with academic fairness. Its task is to serve our own right, always and unflinchingly. These are the words of a man in which the people gave absolute power to, folks, in hopes of achieving a better life. If they'd only read what he said, well, a lot of them probably did, because his book was sold by the millions before he ever came to power. It's amazing the freedoms people will give up when they get in a bad way and start grasping at straws. It's amazing the lies and deception people will believe when they get desperate. So we see here the propagandist feels no obligation to be objective. He feels no obligation to present both sides of the issue. He feels no obligation to budge 1 inch on any issue whatsoever. Again, it's his way or the highway. He will drive his point home over and over and over with these little phrases and sound bites in order to get his point across. And anyone who thinks that propaganda doesn't exist in this country among the political realm has deluded their own minds. Propaganda is alive and well in our nations, folks, and it is spouted forth every day, each and every day, especially by the politicians who hold the higher offices. They have their own personal objectives and will do anything to accomplish those objectives, especially a lot of those on the left. We've seen that lately. And whether or not it benefits the whole of the people makes no difference, even if they have to go against the Constitution of the United States. And we've seen them try to do that. And we in God's church needs to pay attention to this and not be lulled to sleep with all their repetitive soft talk and propaganda. And you will be lulled to sleep if you're not vigilant in pursuing your Christian life. And we can't get caught up in all this as Christians. I don't vote because Christ didn't vote. Christ said His kingdom, His government was not of this world. Well, if I'm a Christian, a follower of Christ, I can't be of this world either. I can't. My kingdom is not of this world either. It's the kingdom that Christ belongs to. So I have to belong to that too. But a lot of people, they'll go vote anyway. And, some people will tell you, if you don't go vote, it's a sin. Some Christian people will tell you that. Even some people of our own tradition will tell you that. Now, what do these kind of people really think about you and me? After all, what do they think about us? They claim to be doing great things for us. They claim to care so much about us. But do they really? Well, they do care about us, and they do need us. But rest assured, it's not because they love you. We're just a means. We're just stepping stones for them to accomplish their own objectives. That's what we are. Adolf says, quote, "The broad mass of a nation does not consist of diplomats or even of professors or political law, or even individuals who are capable of forming a rational opinion. It consists of plain mortals wavering and inclined to doubt and uncertainty, and as soon as our propaganda emits so much as a glimmer of right on the other side, the foundation for doubt on our side has been laid." He says, you can't do that. You can't give in. You can't give any glimmer of rightness to the other side. He says the masses then are in no position to distinguish where the other side's injustice ends and our own begins. But the most brilliant propagandist technique will yield no success unless one fundamental principle is borne in mind constantly and with unflagging attention. It must confine itself to a few points and repeat them over and over and over again. Here, as so often in this world's persistence, is the first and most requirement for success. Now, I don't know about you, but that's what I see in Washington nowadays, in Congress, and the representatives, the House, the representatives, and the Senate, and all that. That's what I see. We have two political parties, and neither is willing to compromise for the benefit of the people they are supposed to be taking care of. They're up there drawing their paychecks, people. A lot of money is paid out to those people, but they're doing nothing for the good of the people. At least most of them aren't. I hate to admit it, but he's right, Adolf that is, in saying the masses as a whole are incapable of forming a rational opinion. For if they were, we would not have the leadership that we have in Washington today. And some of those people like, what's her name, Cortez, and that other one that supposedly married her brother to get him into this country, those people, I mean, they have no common sense whatsoever. They want to tear this country down, and they're in leadership positions, folks. And Washington is full of people like that. Before World War II, the German people were in a desperate situation. They had gotten defeated in World War I, and their economy was in shreds. And they were gullible to the smooth talk and propaganda of Adolf Hitler. Well, right now our economy was going good there, but now it's in shreds again. And we're beginning to be in a desperate situation because of all the people out of work because of the COVID virus. Now, that's not anybody's fault. That's I'll have to admit, that's not the politicians' fault. But we, like the people of Germany, are beginning to grasp at straws, folks. A lot of people are willing to give up their freedoms and to elect into office the politicians who are most skilled in the field of propaganda. When you do that, you will see your privacy invaded. And even our phone system, it is being monitored, people, whether you like to believe it or not. But it's all done in the name of protecting the citizens. Well, really. We've seen this huge push by some people on the left to ban certain guns, or all guns if necessary, all in the name of protecting the citizens. They know that will not stop murder and killing, but they got a whole lot of people believing it, through propaganda. It's crazy, insane people who kill other people with guns, not the gun itself. Excuse me. If there was no such thing as a gun, do you think people would stop killing one another? Before guns were ever invented, people were murdering each other by the thousands. To completely stop murder, you would have to outlaw knives, claw hammers, and tire tools, broken pop bottles, short pieces of 2x4s. And how would you ever stop somebody from strangling somebody else to death with their own hands? Poisoning folks and running them over with cars. But the masses, we the people, as Adolf said, cannot make a rational decision because we're so gullible when it comes to the propaganda of certain political figures. I heard someone say on TV about these wiretaps that the government does. He said, we're not listening to what's being said by people in these conversations. We're just monitoring the calls in case some terrorist gets on the line. If that's not double talk, I don't know what is. How do you monitor a call without listening to what the person is saying? Of course they're listening to what's being said, but there's a whole lot of people who believed him. Propaganda, people, propaganda. Continuing on here with what Adolf said. He said, the purpose of propaganda is not to provide interesting distraction or blasé young gentlemen, for blasé young gentlemen, but to convince the masses. But the masses are slow moving, and they always require a certain time before they are even ready to notice a thing. And only after the simplest ideas are repeated thousands of times will the masses finally remember them. Not that they believe them, but that they remember them, because they are so forgetful that only what they remember will be what counts. The broadness of outline from which we must never depart in combination with steady persistence allows our final success to mature. Then to our amazement we shall see what tremendous results such perseverance leads to results that are almost beyond our understanding. And that's true, you know. Once you get people believing in something, remembering something, the masses, it's amazing what they will do. So again, do we believe for 1 minute this does not go against our own political system? Of course it does. Every time you look at a political ad on TV, you are most likely to encounter some form of propaganda. They run all these ads for different things, and how good some of this stuff can be for the American people and our economy. They convince you that people can have wealth, you know, and health care and stuff like that was never able to afford it before. I don't know if y'all remember, because we have an enormous power to forget. I remember. I don't know if y'all remember what Obama said about Obamacare, you know. He said it would give small businesses more capital to expand their businesses, since they would no longer be paying for most of their employees' health benefits. Which is the very opposite of what it did. You know. But a lot of these politicians, they know, just as Adolf Hitler knew, if they run ads long enough and be persistent long enough, the people, the masses, will accept it, whether it's true or not. It's propaganda and deception. Anything that the government does, people, is paid for by taxpayers' money. So we pay for our own delusion. We pay for the propaganda that is thrown at us every day. But most people don't want to hear the truth. Most people want to be lied to. We as a people cannot face truth of any kind, seemingly, anymore, politically or spiritually. Jeremiah 5:31, it says, the prophets prophesy falsely, and the priests bear rule by their means, and my people love to have it so. We love to be lied to not only by the politicians, but by the preachers out there in the spiritual community. In other words, we as a people are not being taught the truth of God by the so-called religious community. You know, they are teaching God's people as a nation lies, people, and we know that. But it says that's what the masses wants to hear. We don't want, or they don't want to be told that homosexuality is wrong. We don't want to be told that same-sex marriage is wrong. We don't want to be told that abortion and murder of our most vulnerable people, citizens, is wrong. Because we want to do these things, and we want it to be sanctioned by the religious community and by the political community. We want to be told that it's okay to do that. And if the religious and political community says it's okay, then we don't have to feel guilty about what we do because it's legal under the system in which we live. Also in 2 Timothy 4, verses 3 and 4, the Apostle Paul says this of God's people. He says, "For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lust shall they heap to themselves teachers having itching ears," or rather, leaders, religious and politically, who will lie to them. That's what they want. It says, "And they shall turn away their ears from the truth, and shall be turned into fables," or lies. We as a people, the masses, wants to be lied to. That's what we want to hear. And when you've got a people of this mindset, propaganda is on fertile ground, people. It's been said that 3/4 of the population believe that the president, any president, right on down to the local level of government, the people in the local government, is lying to us. 3/4 of the population believe that our government is lying to us. But those same 3/4 will turn right around and elect them back to office again. So what Hitler said is true. The results are indeed beyond our understanding. What they do is beyond reasoning and rational thinking. But they do it because they want to believe the propaganda. They want to believe the lies, even though a large percentage know that it's not true. Boggles the mind. Boggles the mind. We hear these high-ranking political personalities run on the ticket of saving Social Security, don't we? Cutting taxes for the middle class and universal health care. We've been told that for 40 years, people, and it's not come to pass yet. But we still believe them, don't we? We still believe the propaganda because we're a desperate people. When a president is first elected to office, his approval rating is extremely high. When he leaves office 8 years later, his approval has usually dropped drastically. Then we began looking for new propagandists to tell us the same old lies. But folks, when you've got a man occupying the highest office in the land, and he's a liar, then your nation is in a dangerous predicament. And it's not just the president, it's everybody in Congress, and right on down to your local political people. It's all of them. They won't tell you the truth. Look what happened to the German people under Adolf Hitler. He got the trains up and he got them running on time. He got the economy back on its feet. He brought the Volkswagen car into existence, a car for the common people, a car people could afford. His approval rating was high because the masses were living a better life. And they were behind him in everything he did. That was his purpose of doing that. It was not for them, it was for his own personal agenda. But look where he finally brought them. He brought them down to a conquered people, a nation split right down the middle, east and west. Once again, Germany was in total ruins. And it all happened in just a few, very few short years. Because the people believed his lies and his propaganda machine. And folks, we too, yes, us here in the good old United States, We too believe in a culture of lies and deception brought on us by our political leaders. We too live in a nation of political propaganda. We live in a culture where we punish the people who are trying to tell us the truth and reward those who are lying to us. We've got it all backwards. As it says in Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20, we call evil good and good evil. We put darkness for light and light for darkness, bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Everything just opposite of what it is. He says we justify the wicked for a reward, or a bribe, that is, and take away the righteousness from the righteous, and have cast away the law of the Lord. God says, woe unto the people who do such things. Our leaders in Washington and Congress, they don't base their governing on the laws of God whatsoever. They may say, God bless this and God bless that and God bless America, but they don't base what they do on God's laws. None of the sort. And when God says woe, He says woe to these people. He's not talking good. He's talking about bad things to come. And He says woe unto these people who do all these evil things and take pride in doing them. Like Sodom, we pride ourselves in all the evil we do as a nation. And God's not going to put up with it forever. And I fear that it's close, people. I fear His wrath is close. And anyone who, by chance, may hear what I'm saying needs to understand this and make preparations to turn your life around before it's too late. In Malachi 3:6, God says, I am the Lord, I change not. And if you want to add Hebrews 13:8 to that, and James 1:17 as well, if you want to add that, it says, I am the Lord, I change not. I am the same yesterday, today, and forever. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, and comes from the Father of lights, with whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. God the Father and Jesus Christ, folks, they don't change. Their purpose for the nation of Israel, those of us in the church, and the whole of humanity has never changed from the creation of man until this very day. So we can look back in the Bible and see examples of what God did in ancient times when His people as a nation did right and what He did when they did wrong and embraced evil. And whatever it was, we should be able to see clearly that's what He will also do to us in modern times, because He doesn't change. He operates the same way now as He did back then. We should expect nothing different. If He punished His people back then for being proud and high-minded in their evil works, then there's no reason for us to expect anything different. And whatever message He gave them back then is the same message He has for us today. And with that in mind, turn to Jeremiah 8. Because in Jeremiah's time, Israel and Judah had become a culture of lies and propaganda. Jeremiah, let me get over there. Jeremiah 8. Let's see here. Jeremiah 8, verse 5. It says, why then is this people of Jerusalem slidden back by perpetual backsliding? They hold fast deceit, and they refuse to return. Well, it's the same today. No one will tell you the truth, especially politicians. Politicians will tell you a lie And then if you back them into a corner, they will tell you another lie to prop up the first, and then another, and then another, and then another. They will never tell you the truth. They hold fast deception, like it says here. They refuse to tell the truth. You can ask them a simple question, simple yes or no question, but they will never give you a yes or no answer. Verse 6 here, Jeremiah. I hearkened and heard, but they spake not aright. No man repented him of his wickedness, saying, What have I done? Everyone turned to his course as the horse rushes into battle. In other words, they run as hard as they can to lie and do evil as a horse that's running into battle, is what he's saying. Verse 7, Yea, the stork in the heaven knows her appointed times, and the turtle and the crane and the swallow observe the time of their coming. But my people know not the judgment of the Lord. How do you say, We are wise, and the law of the Lord is with us? Lo, certainly, in vanity made he it. The pen of the scribes is in vain. The pen of the scribe, he says, is in vain. Well, we've got laws. We've got due process, and we're supposed to go by. But certain political figures think they don't have to abide by the laws. So they go over the law to get done what they want done. And they get by with it. Verse 9, the wise men are ashamed. They are dismayed and taken. Lo, they have rejected the word of the Lord, and what wisdom is in them. We have all these so-called wise, educated people, don't we? Which we have chosen to rule over us. People who are supposed to be leading us down the right path. But it's these very people who have rejected God. It's these people who have rejected the only standard by which all other wisdom is measured by. And when the wisdom of God is rejected, folks, there is no hope whatsoever for us. For God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Verse 10, Therefore will I give their wives unto others, and their fields to them that shall inherit them. For everyone, from the least even to the greatest, is given to covetousness. From the prophet even unto the priest, everyone deals falsely. Everyone. Nobody will tell you the truth. From the religious leaders and your local civil governments to Congress to the president, nobody. It's all lies and propaganda for the most part. They all deal falsely with us, but we love it, and that's the way we want it. They've got all these strategies laid out as to what will work with the masses. What strategy we can use to influence the public. What propaganda we can use to sway the people for our own selfish purposes. How can we play on the emotions of the people? And that's what they do. Well, what about us as Christians? Because it's all too easy for us to fall right in with the masses. It's all too easy for us to ride along on our emotions too. We need to listen carefully and be able to discern when they are feeding us a bunch of baloney. We need to be able to discern that. Now, I've been tricked more than once in my life by people who I thought were my friends. So be careful who you hang out with. Be careful who you befriend. Chapter 9 here, verse 4. Take you heed every one of his neighbor, and trust you not in any brother. For every brother will utterly supplant, and every neighbor will walk with slanders. And they will deceive every one his neighbor, and will not speak the truth. They have taught their tongues to speak lies, and weary themselves to commit iniquity. In other words, they work at it like a job. Verse 6. Your habitation is in the midst of deceit. Through deceit they refuse to know me, says the Lord. Therefore, says the Lord of hosts, behold, I will melt them and try them. For how shall I do for the daughter of my people? Their tongue is as an arrow shot out. It speaks deceit. One speaks peaceably to his neighbor with his mouth, but in his heart he lays his weight. Shall I not visit them for these things, says the Lord? Shall not my soul be avenged on a nation such as this? For the mountains will I take up a weeping and wailing, and for the habitations of the wilderness a lamentation, because they are burned up, so that none can pass through them. Neither can men bear the voice of the cattle. Both the fowl of the heavens and the beasts are fled, they are gone. And I will make Jerusalem heaps and a den of dragons, and I will make the cities of Judah desolate without habitation. So we need to listen carefully and to use sound judgment, people, and common sense as to what's being said by our leaders today, and not be played for a fool. And after realizing all this, and all this being said, I'm still thankful to be an American citizen. I'm still thankful to live in this land. I'm thankful for the freedoms we still have in this nation, or at least the ones I can pay for. I'm thankful we can still meet here to worship God without having to hide somewhere. I'm thankful for the blessings God has given me in this land. But I can't say I'm proud to be an American, because I'm not proud of some of the abominable things my government stands for. I'm not proud of abortion and homosexuality and stuff like that, some of those policies we have. Our government today is not truthful. I'm having a hard time getting my tongue straight today. Our government today is not truthful with its citizens. Our leaders are not truthful with the very people who entrust them with their well-being. Instead of looking out for their well-being, they use them as stepping stones for their own positions and power, without understanding or caring how their subjects have to live. It's as though they would rather lie to us as to tell us the truth, when it would be more convenient to tell us the truth, and to tell the truth for all involved. This is the way of Satan, and our nation is full of the way of Satan. Lies and propaganda. We have become Sodom, and we have become Gomorrah. And God says He will, and I repeat, He will avenge Himself of a nation like this. Isaiah. We'll turn to Isaiah and I'll finish up here. Isaiah 1. It's a very familiar scripture here. Starting in verse 2. Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth. For the Lord has spoken. I have nourished and brought up children, and they have rebelled against me. The ox knows its owner, and the ass its master's crib, but Israel does not know. My people does not consider. Ah, sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity, a seed of evildoers, children that are corrupters. They have forsaken the Lord. They have provoked the Holy One of Israel unto anger. They are all gone away backwards. Why should you be stricken any more, he asked. Yet you revolt more and more. The whole head is sick. He says the whole leadership, all of them, is sick, and the whole heart faint. From the sole of the foot even to the head, there is no soundness in it, just wounds and bruises and putrefaction putrefying sores. They have not been closed, neither bound up, neither mollified with ointment. Your country is desolate. Your cities are burned with fire. Your land, strangers devour it in your presence. And it is desolate, as overthrown by strangers. And people, we see a lot of that in our country too, a lot of these different nationalities that's coming in here, that they want to live by their own laws and own rules, want to bring all of that with them. And they're overtaking us. Verse 8, and the daughter of Zion is left as a cottage in a vineyard, as a lodge in a garden of cucumbers, as a besieged city, except the Lord of hosts had left us a very small remain. We should have been as Sodom, and we should have been like unto Gomorrah. What else can I say?